Hello and welcome to the Business Hour podcast at Magic Door Studio, Balbriggan. I'm your host Shane, and today we're here with the very interesting and inspirational Dan Glynn. Hi, Dan.
Good to meet you, Shane. How are you?
To you, Dan. I'm mighty.
Good.
So you're into a lot of different things, Dan. You do high performance coaching. You got a gym. We'll get into some of the details. Where is your gym?
Gym is based in Navan, County Meath, capital of the world.
Capital of the world, capital of Meath anyway, true capital. I'm a Dunboy man myself. At least I'm adopted Dunboy man. I love it there. I love Meath. It's a great county, good people.
It is when you're from Meath nowadays. If we're having this conversation the last few years, you might be saying something different.
absolutely. But yeah, no, it's I'm my kids are full Meath. And yeah, by the banners and the flags, and it's a great place.
Amazing.
So it seems like you've always been into sports and fitness and stuff. Did you study that in college, or how did you get into it? Did you fall into it?
Yeah, I suppose I was always interested in it. Growing up as a kid, I'd always played multiple sports. Football, soccer, anything that was going really. School I loved and hate. I loved it from the aspect it was great fun and great crack. A bit like us, we get to waffle and get paid for it at times.
Yeah, right.
But then I hated the other part where it was educational. I was never really, never academic. My brother was a genius. So when I once came to CEO, I was like, right, what the hell do I do with myself here? And I got my seventh option, which was in IT Tralee at the time, studying exercise science, and got into that, started
So you went to Tralee?
Went to Tralee, down in Kerry. I didn't get any of the Kerry footballing skills, unfortunately. But I had some amazing people down there, and I actually went to do PE teaching. That was the original plan.
That was the plan, right?
And once I got in there, again, met some amazing people, and I just found this spark in me that wanted to go down a completely different route, and it's brought me kind of where I am today, doing the work that I'm doing around psychology and mental performance, and ultimately trying to help people perform in moments and things that matter to them, whether that's in sport in Croke Park, whether that's in business, whether that's in everyday life as a mum or as a dad. It's funny because when I meet people, they say, geez, you seem to be doing everything, like a jack of all trades, mate.
No, it's a very transferable skill set, though.
Isn't it? The funny thing is, it's kind of the same thing in all different contexts. If you're working with someone who's, like last week I was in Croke Park and for the quarterfinal of the All Ireland with a team, and then Monday morning I'm with a dad who's struggling out with stress and overwhelmed, but often it's the same things.
Same thing, yeah. As a dad of two young kids, I can tell you, I feel like a high performance athlete sometimes.
It is high performance at times.
Yeah,
definitely.
Who are you in Croker with?
Monaghan senior footballers. Have been working with them this year, so it's been a good journey. Not the end of the journey we would have liked, but that's what a journey is all about. It's the ups and downs and the highs and lows, and overall I think it's been
And do you work with other county teams?
Not senior football. If I'm in, I'm all in. It's how I operate and work with everything. So from senior footballers, lots of other teams, club teams, and I'd work with the Meath development squads as well. So yeah, a nice mix.
Yeah, good, absolutely. A good place to be. I mean, GA is it's a phenomenal sport. And I suppose sports psychology is a field that's really only started to emerge and develop in the last 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
I could be wrong on that. You might correct me, approximately how long. But, even in GA, which is an amateur sport, to see that level of professionalism coming in and trying to get that edge, obviously for a long while they're trying to take Dublin off the top of the table. All the counties had to up their game and stuff, and it's great to see. Are there many people doing kind of sports psychology in Ireland at kind of your level?
I don't know really, to be honest. There's definitely a lot in the field. I know some other amazing sports psychs who've helped me along the journey as well, and there's definitely people there. But I think it is getting bigger, and I think it's getting bigger because we're getting more open.
Yeah.
Like having these conversations 15, 20 years ago, if we were sitting in a podcast room and talking about mental performance, we'd probably be thrown in a jail cell or something.
Exactly, yeah. Even just basic mental health was very overlooked, and it wasn't seen as a kind of thing you could be open about.
So much, and I think I think we've become more open, but I think the science is actually starting to catch up. Like, I think that's, particularly as human beings, we're skeptical people, and the world now, I believe it's built on control. Everything that's built in the world is built on, if you wear a Fitbit, it tells you if you've walked enough. If you wear a Whoop, it tells you if you're recovered enough. If you do a health test, it'll tell you how healthy you are. I think as human beings, our natural instinct is we need a sense of control. And I think because the science has caught up so much now in terms of particularly the area of neuroscience, which is study of the brain, and we can see now how, even how our emotions are connected towards the physical body and how that influences our health. And because the science is starting to prove that, I think it removes that skepticism where people say, that's waffle, that's wishy-washy, it doesn't really matter. But we kind of always know it. If I say to people like for, I'd say, hundreds of years, if you're stressed out, what's the first thing someone will say to you? Take a breath.
Yeah.
Exactly. So there was never any science, but there was always
understanding of
an understanding and awareness of it. And the way I love to describe it, like even coming up here today, I was saying, God, what the hell is this place? What am I walking into? Straight
What's
away,
behind the magic door?
I can feel myself starting to sweat. I can feel my heart rate starting to crease. But that was from an emotion that I was feeling that was connected in the body. So I think. Would
you consider yourself a very self-aware person? Were you always self-aware? Is that something that is it a learned thing? Is it an innate thing? Or is it a bit of both?
I think it's probably, if I'm really honest, when I've been forced to have to really when, like I was saying, I went to college originally to become a PE teacher, but my first year in there was all about PE teaching. It's the only thing I wanted to do. And I met some amazing lecturers, but the big shift for me back then was my own uncle committed suicide. And it was the first real moment in the family where, we'd had traumas in terms of naturally grannies and granddads, etc. But it was the first real moment where something like that happened. And, I think we can all relate to that in life, not that context, but what that context can bring up for us. It forces you to stop, to pause, to look at your life in a different way. And, before that, if you asked me about mindset or meditation or any of this stuff, I'd say it's all for woo, la, people, they're all mad and daft. But it forced me to go down and look at this area. And I think ever since then, to kind of answer that question, it's forced me to be more aware, because I just remember after that happened, I said, if that happened to someone like that, how can I not know it might not happen to me or other people around me again?
So you're trying to find answers about why and understand that mindset and stuff like that. And that, yeah. I mean, the world we live in nowadays, people are thankfully very, very much more open to mindfulness and that. And I mean, the reality is it's something that transcends cultural boundaries, geographic boundaries, and has done for a very, very long time. A friend of mine's a consultant in St. Vincent's, and I mean they prescribe mindfulness now and meditation as which is again a very recent thing. It's not the kind of strict science anymore of like what can be calculated, that we accept that there's more going on, and you just have to you just have to explore and try and figure it out and stuff. It's a fascinating field. You're very lucky to be obviously you've plowed this for yourself, but I'm sure it's made you much more rounded as a human being as well.
Definitely,
and a better friend and a better sibling. Do you have siblings?
I have one brother. He might answer that question differently depending on the week of the day. Depending if I helped him out with something or I said no, I'm too busy. No, look, I think I'm human like us all. I make mistakes. I mess up all the time.
Good.
I think
good opportunity to learn.
I think that's the mindset I try approach at. Like it's weird. Not weird. It's something that I tend to do. Is like in anything that I do, I try to come up with like mantras or statements, or even when I'm working with teams, we've different mantras that and they're kind of like statements or affirmations that bring you around, who you really are, what you apply to yourself as, what your kind of culture is, one of the ones I use for my own self is every mess is a message. Like, you know, in that there's always some message, and
Love that.
I
Every
think
mess is a message.
every mess is a message. Yeah,
So good.
so simple, like, you
Yeah.
know, but so true. Like if you meet someone and you ask them what's one of the biggest lessons you've ever got, I can guarantee it was through some mess.
Mm.
It was through some shit,
Mm.
some trauma, some challenge, some adversity that they've had to have gone through, because we're bombarded with podcasts and information, all these stuff these days.
My own is every adversity carries the seed of equivalent advantage, which is very similar, which is to say problems carry, have a message, every mess is a message. And that's what it is. And if you have that mindset, I'm sure, man, in your space, you follow Mr. Goggins and and others who are, kind of pioneering that and actually putting it out there that's actually in the modern age, that's being manly is having that kind of mindset and taking care of your mental health and So when you work with a team, do you work with players one-on-one, or do you work with them as a group, or a bit of both, or do some players need more, and are some players resistant?
Yeah,
to that kind of end of it, or
you have a full mix and range, really. Like, I suppose the work, like, depending on the team, and like if I'm in with a team and I'm all in, it's all encompassing. So you'll be meeting individual players one-to-one, you'll be working with the team in a group setting, and then working with the management and the background team and the head coach.
Yeah.
Around all things, from culture, from mindset, from expectations, challenges, all these different areas. And like it, in every source of life, you have people who love it and would do, like, soak up every inch of it. And you have other people, if you got them to take a pinch of salt, you'd be flying. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think the biggest thing in all this is you have to meet people where they're at. Like, you have to
take them along.
allow people to do that at their own pace and own level. Whereas I think if you force people into something too early, and it's done by fear, it never manifests into what it can be. Like, even someone was going into Croke Park there on the Sunday, and there was an athlete I worked with 2 years ago. Not work with him specifically, but he was on the team I was working with, and I was trying to get through to him that whole year. Couldn't get anything. But when I bumped into him, he was getting a coffee outside Croke Park, and I said, "How are you getting on?" He's like, "Honestly?" I said, "Yeah, so I asked you the question." He said, "Not great." I said, "Oh, grand, do you want to go for a coffee?" Now, that's probably taken him 2 years to get to that point. But I think, again, it comes back to that point, is you need to meet people where they're at. Like, and
like in your own story, sometimes it takes trauma and life getting turned upside down to be like, to realize, hang on a second, I need help here. I'm a bit all over the place. I could actually do with help
completely, like,
and you could come along at the right message with the wrong time.
Yeah,
for that person.
Yeah, it's kind of like a book, I suppose. Like, I have so many books at home where you buy the book, you say, "Oh, that book's a load of shite." Like, and then 5 years later, you're immersed in it. Like, this is the most amazing book ever. Or my brother will probably say this when I was growing up, like, and we probably all have this, like, when I was growing up, my brother would buy some new clothes, something, like, come home and I'd slag and say, "State of that's rotten." 6 months later, I'd be wearing it. Like, do you know what I mean? Everything's dependent on, like, number one, it's your resistance to it, like, and number two, it's what you need in that moment as well, like, you know what I mean?
Do you have a favorite book at the minute?
I don't.
Something you're pushing on, something you're advocating for, your athletes and stuff.
I don't have one. Do you know what? I've read very little books. I've lots of books, but I've read very little books.
I can tell you something. You're a very, very busy man, so it doesn't surprise me you don't have time for books to read.
There's time for everything that's important here. That's what I look at.
Okay, well said. Yeah.
The one, I don't have any, I suppose, at the moment, but the one book I don't know if you've ever read, I always recommend to everyone, is Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl.
I haven't read it. No. I've heard of it, though.
The most incredible book I think anyone can read. And no matter what stage of your life you're at, the message is so congruent to anyone at any stage, at any age, at any level. It's the most phenomenal book. I would tell you the book.
I give it a read.
No point in going reading it then, is
No, I give it a read. My own that I push on people is Sapiens. Sapiens, Yuval Noah Harari.
No, actually.
Just it's kind of the story of mankind, who we are, where we came from, why we are what we are. It's
Yeah.
just, it's an extraordinary book.
Yeah.
Couldn't recommend it enough. So how do you split your day? Yeah, so you've three parts to what you do. So Dan Glynn extends himself into the gym. Obviously, you've got
Yeah.
the physical gym.
Yeah.
You do coaching,
Yeah.
and then you do high performance stuff as well.
Teams. Yeah.
High
Yeah.
performance and teams.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's the three main parts. What
Pretty
you do.
much.
How do you
Exactly.
split up your day?
I don't.
You don't. So you just deal with stuff as it comes to you, basically. Or is
Look,
it all kind of? I mean,
it's kind of mixed, like,
do you have an office at the gym? Is that where you're based out of?
Yeah, so I have an office in the gym in there. We've an amazing team of 6 in there. So we've built up a really good team over there the last few years. And it's funny too, three of the people on the team are clients who just came in and walked into the gym, went through the journey, went on the journey, loved it, believed in the philosophy, and I managed to rope them into it and leave their other jobs. So it's a special place to me, the gym. It's funny because the same things I do in the gym are the same things I'll do with a team as well.
Yeah.
Like, it's just in a different context, and that's again, like, although I'm doing lots of different things, it's the same message and the same ways you kind of deliver everything in it. Like, the language and word might change slightly, but at its heart and at its foundational level, it's all the same things. Like.
What sort of equipment do you have in the gym? What do you do?
We do a mix. What we really do, it's a holistic based gym, so it's where we focus on integrated health and well-being. The idea of that is it's to give people a space and a place where, about 5-6 years ago, before I set up the gym, I was actually going to quit the industry completely and leave it. The reason being, I found it was becoming, and I think is becoming even more, a toxic industry, an industry that's based on image, judgment.
Is that driven by social media and
Completely.
false perceptions of what people are supposed to be?
I think it's driven by social media. It's also driven by commercialism, which also feeds into, I suppose, social media. Like, I think the whole world is off commercialism now. I'll sell you this image and this identity, and once you get it and you achieve it, you'll be happy, you'll be fulfilled, which is what I bought into back in the day, which is why I also got on into all these things, like I was mentioning earlier with my uncle. And so what I was thinking about quitting the whole industry, and you'll enjoy this actually. There was before I was going to, it was during COVID as well, so kind of nice time for us all to stop and pause. But there was, the Greeks were the first people to set up gymnasiums. I don't know if you ever knew this. But the Greeks were the first people to set up gymnasiums, and what you had to do when you went into what was called a gymnasium back then, the first thing you had to do was exercise, some form of movement, whether it was running, whether it was lifting rocks, running up steps, wrestling. That was the first bit of it. The second bit you had to go into was the baths. And this was, the baths was about replenishment, recovery, healing.
Very good.
And the last bit of it, where you went into a room, you sat down and you studied philosophy. And you studied what life meant to you, what life means to this person, why do you mean that, you ask deeper, more meaningful questions.
That's class. And
that's what a gymnasium used to be.
Yeah.
Now, if you look at what we have, you wear a sports bra, you wear leggings that are fucking wedged onto you, you wear a super small t-shirt, you go in, you pump yourself full of blood, you walk in and think you're phenomenal and your life is achieved, like. And we wonder why we have so many mental health problems.
Yeah.
Like.
Wow, that just that there. I mean, that's wisdom. And ancient wisdom as well, that we could do the benefit of, listening to, and that's.
So
do you have philosophy at your gym? Like, I mean, I assume you're not sitting down for philosophy class and stuff, but like, do you have decor around the place, or like how do you bring that? How do you bring philosophy into that?
I think we bring it in, number one, like everything. It's the environment that you create. Like you need to create an open, honest, non-judgmental, safe environment for people to express themselves on what that is and what it looks like. You also need to have a bit of fun. I think we forget the element of fun and laughter, which kids do so well, but we become adults and we think we need to be old and boring. Like, so we kind of create the environment like that, and then we deliver it in different ways. So, like within the gym, like you've arranged from like up to 40 different sessions a week. Some of them are strength work, some it's condition work. And then we've yoga, we've meditation, we've sound bath sessions, we do workshops, and we've created little spaces within the gym where people people will come in sometimes 20, 25 minutes before a session, sit down and have a cup of tea,
I love that you're doing sound baths and yoga and stuff as well. Obviously, yoga is kind of associated with exercise, but sound baths not so much. Sound baths are for mental well-being.
completely.
That's class. Do you have a gong, or do you play it through stereo, or how do you do it?
I don't do it. I wouldn't put them through that anyway. We've an amazing woman. We have an amazing woman, Joanne. She's been coming in the last 18 months. Actually, she's runs her own podcast. I only did one with her recently. But she comes in and delivers it in there. And for me, it's one of the most important pieces, because again, the reason why we set up the gym was to create the opposite of what every other gym basically is.
It sounds like it, yeah.
And when people come in, that's often what they say. It's the opposite of every other place I've been. I'm like, perfect, we're doing the right thing.
Navan is lucky to have you there. Tell you that much.
Thanks a million.
The word gymnasium, is that a Greek word?
I actually don't know. I actually don't know. I just know that's where the origins of what a gymnasium. Like, you think about it now. If you go sign up to a gym, like, you can do whatever you want. Whereas there wasn't a question like where, oh yeah, look, I'll do the wrestling and I might do the bats, but then I don't want to do that other bit. That's soft. I'll leave that off. That's not for me. Like, you had to do that. Like, and we kind of create, not maybe as strictly, but we kind of have that philosophy. Like, to me, like, if you look at the human being, we're far more than just the body.
Yeah.
It's the body, it's the mind, and it's the spirit.
Yeah.
And all them three pillars ultimately make who we are, but ultimately it's our health. Like, and like you say, to like so many people who could be, so many people are super fit and super strong, but they're depressed off their head. So many people are so full of good fun and good life, but they're waiting for a heart attack because they're way overweight. So many people have such fun and freedom in their life, but they can't hold down a job because they're living on a desert island. You know what I mean? To me, like, high performance is ultimately having all of them three pillars congruently working with each other in rhythm. And to me, that's what really high performance actually is. Like, I think it's very easy to perform well in one single pillar.
I think the word pillars in itself is good, because you need all three to hold up the building. Each of them is as important as the other. You lose one, you lose it all.
You lose it all, like, completely, like, and like, it's all completely connected, like, and sometimes I do say they're all three pillars, but sometimes they're actually just one pillar. Do you know what I mean? Because they're all. Yeah. It's not even that they're connected; they just are. Like, it can't be any different. Like, if you hadn't got your mind, well, you haven't got anything else. Like, you've nothing. Like, if you haven't got your body, you're not here. Like, if you haven't got a sense of spirit alive in you, you can be physically here. You're not here.
You're not here. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So to me, I think they're all one pillar, because they're the fundamental part. And this is where I talk about. Often I talk about the same things, just in different word and a different language. If I go in and talk to a team about that, they say, this is wishy-washy, he's fucking cracked.
I was going to ask you about that. Like, so you go in day one, does it take time to build trust? And, obviously what you're doing, firstly, it takes a little bit of time to see results. And then secondly, it's hard to measure the results as well.
Yeah.
Like, when a team's playing well and they have that confidence and it runs through the panel and everybody's playing well and they're confident and things are good, it's easy to say, okay, yeah, well, we're playing well. Say, when you go in, how even for the the head coach or whoever, I assume it would be a head coach who would hire you in or bring you in, how do they measure how well you're doing the job? Or can you measure, like, is it tangible? It's not really tangible, should I say. Like, how?
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to manage, because often, particularly in a GA setting, it's, you go win a game, say, oh, we're flying, everything's going really well and brilliant. And you go out and lose the next game, say, oh God, that's not working, we have to get rid of that. Say, hold on a second. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So it's kind of a hard one to measure in ways. To me, like, one way I would measure, particularly when I work with athletes, from their own performances, is accumulation of performance from different areas. So, like, often we'll measure success on the outcome, on the result, whereas to me it's the process. Like, it's looking at your KPIs, it's looking at, well, how many turnovers have we gotten, how many shots have we got off, how many from a physical tactical game point, it's trying to break it down from that aspect, which would be more kind of the coach's role, but I might help them around that a little bit. But I suppose from my aspect, it's things like how they feel coming into the game, how they feel overall, how much were they able to stay present with it in that game, what character highlights did they show and strengthen, and who are they becoming more of. And I think all that's kind of great, but I think the ultimate kind of way to measure it is just sitting down and talking to you.
Asking,
You know what I mean? Just ask a simple question, like. And it is even a big one for me there, where working with a particular team where they wanted to get to the top step and didn't, and even talking with one of them like 3 or 4 days after, he said, I actually don't feel that bad, but and this might sound wrong, like, and he was like, he said to me, this might sound wrong, but I don't actually feel that bad. I said, why would that sound wrong? He said, well, previously, I would have been so consumed that if I'd lost that game,
win or losing is everything.
Everything was out.
Yeah.
I was so moody. I was so pissed off. I was so whatever. And it would have completely consumed me. And sometimes when you think as an athlete, that's a bad thing, because you think you need to be obsessed with it. And you do need to be obsessed with it. But it becomes your whole soul identity and it consumes you. You can't actually perform at your best, because it's like me, if I'm doing this podcast right now and I say everything I say has to be perfect and has to resonate with everyone. If I don't, I'm not good enough. I won't be good enough. Everything I come into on this conversation, if when at moments I don't speak the way I want to speak or say something the way I want to articulate or communicate, if I base everything based on that, I won't be able to say what I want to say fully, because I'm going to be so consumed.
Yeah, you're stuck in it.
Stuck in it. I'm not present. I'm not fully in it. And particularly as athletes, like when we want to perform, like when we want to be in flow, in that flow state where everything's at equilibrium, there's no thought, we're just in it, we feel free, there's no pressure. And that's why...
And you're not afraid of losing is when you do best.
When you do best, like, you know what I mean? But sometimes we build up this whole thing of need to be on it, need to be really boom, boom, boom. And then we get so consumed we can't be present in it anymore. And to me, that was like, coming back to that question, how do you measure that? To me, that was a huge measurement, because it showed how much he has progressed as an athlete. And yeah, he didn't get the outcome that day, but what that has allowed him to learn and what that allowed him to build into next year and the following years after that, his ability to manage pressure and expectation becomes at a different level he never did before.
Exactly.
That's the goal, I think. Like.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful. And I think again, talking about transferable skills, I think that's something that crosses into not just sport but business as well, and home life and everything else. For me in business, I make mistakes. I do. I aim high. I want everything to be perfect. I notice things on prints and stuff that need to be just that. I'm not happy with it. Nobody else would notice it, or at least they're like, but to me, I want to aim high all the time.
Yeah.
But when I mess it up, I can't just. I can't afford to be consumed by that. I have to just say, right, I messed it up.
Yeah.
I just move on and and stay positive and aim high for next time. Learn from mistakes. I think mistakes are opportunity for growth always, and if you have that mindset and you're not too consumed with failure, you can fly so much higher and go so much further.
Definitely. And I think the ability to get to that, like, in terms of, like, it's very easy to, when you're out of it, to be like, that was a great lesson, but when you're in it, it's very hard.
It's in the moment.
In that moment. And come back to Viktor Frankl, that book, Man's Search for Meaning, he talks about the gap between stimulus and response. And what he ultimately talks about, stimulus is our external environment, our external conditions, all the external pressure and stress. And it's all the stories that we tell ourselves. And our biggest ultimate fears as a human being is, what will people say? What will people think? And what if I'm not loved? They're the three biggest actual fears we have. What Frankl speaks about is that gap is between stimulus and response. It's about keeping that gap. It's about, when I'm in them moments, how can I keep that level of awareness, that level, that space where I don't become my outside environment, where I don't become that story, where I remember who I am, what I'm worth, and my power. And then my ability is able to choose the response, and for me, like, I think, coming back, it's very hard when you're in it. I think
why is it, do you think, evolutionarily, why are we built that way? Like, what advantage is it to humans to be like that?
I think
to be so concerned with what the group thinks and stuff. Is there?
There's a natural way. if we look back as hunters and gatherers, how do we survive? It's in a tribe.
Yeah, tribe,
if you lived on your own as a hunter and gatherer,
it's just that fear that you're going to screw up and get kicked out and you're on your own, you're
it's
toast.
It's an innate thing, and it's that innate thing that we can't just turn off the switch and
Yeah,
close
we can't.
that.
No, it runs really deep.
And we needed that, because if we didn't have that, like if we did something out of the group norm, we didn't apply by, you'd be kicked out of the group, or even worse, you'd be killed. And if you weren't even in the group and they still kept you alive, you'd be dead within days anyway, because like, how did you hunt? How did you build shelter? How did you protect yourself? We hadn't got thermostats.
So it's kind of a defensive, protective measure, where when you read a negative comment on a social media post, you got so many positives. The negative one is the one that you're thinking about at night time, and that's it's evolutionary group thing.
There's that innate thing. The second part of that, though, also as well, is that the brain is 90% of your thoughts are negative and repeated. So if you constantly have a repeated thought over and over and over and over and over, that's the same thought from before, the brain will attach things towards that. And the third ultimate thing, it comes back to that I think it's the most important question, knowing who you are. And the more you know who you are, again, coming back to that athlete example, when he lost and he realized, 4 days later, I don't really, I don't feel as bad as I would have before. Maybe I should feel more bad. He felt like that because his whole identity, he thought who he was just a footballer.
Wrapped into that,
Just wrapped into that. So
and so once one pillar starts to wobble, he's gone.
He's gone. And coming back to that thing.
How do you teach a young athlete, someone who's 19, 20, they're just breaking into a panel? How do you teach them that how do you get that across to them?
I think, though, particularly at that age, you can't teach it without going through it. Like,
sorry to cut across you again, especially in the modern age where social media is, and cameras and camera phones. It seems like it's much harder for young people now to make mistakes.
Yeah.
That it'll haunt them and stuff, and there's the fear of that and stuff. So how do you teach them that?
I think, I think it's very hard to teach someone who without avoiding it, with avoiding it. And I think that's the big thing. There's a client I have, her name's Terry, she's amazing, but she works with children and the parents, and particularly children who are struggling with things. And often what she tells me, the biggest problem with most children is the avoidance of all these things. Sometimes we try to, and I'm not an expert in this, I'm just taking this from what she's saying, and I'm mindful of that in case people start messaging me, will you help me with my children? Saying, geez, no, you don't want that. But a lot of what she would say, is that avoidance piece. And even taking it from an adult's aspect, often, when we're overwhelmed with something, what do? We avoid it, or we put on the long finger, or we say, I must get to that. And we just get more overwhelmed and more worked up about it. Whereas I think, what she would talk a lot about, and even what I'd see even within, adults as well, I think when you don't avoid something and you go through it, but the biggest part of being able to go through is having a supportive environment around you.
Yeah, exactly.
I think naturally when you have that support environment, there's openness, there's honesty.
That's the tribe again. If the tribe is saying it's okay to fuck up, you're fine.
Completely. You know what I mean? And and I think that removes that massive fear factor, and that's where particularly, we struggle to be open and honest at times. But I think that's also due to the environment that we create, whether we can do that. And it's the same with teams as well. Often they say, well, they're not performing. And say, well, maybe they're afraid to perform. They're so afraid to make a mistake. They're so afraid to mess up that they're not willing to express themselves in case it doesn't work out.
How do you find the business side of what you do? The bookkeeping, HR. Is that something that comes naturally to you? Is that something you've had to work at and learn?
Oh, I love it.
You enjoy that
so
part?
Much.
That's what you have here.
Ask Joy, who's my manager, and she'll tell you exactly what the answer is to that.
I had a quick look at your social media. Your content's pretty good. You're trying to. What's your goal with your social media? Obviously, the end goal is to get people into your gym, to get yourself, your own brand, more, out to people, that they can see what you do and want to bring you in to help them. So I'm assuming your goal is to help as many people as you can and where you can. But what's your goal with social media? Is it just getting people in? Is it just imparting advice? Is it a bit of both?
I think
do you have a direction?
Connected. I think the more you help people, the more they'll come to you. And I think my ultimate tagline, because that's the thing. Like I have the gym, and then I've inside out high performance, working with teams, and athletes, and they all have the same message, and to me, that same message is ultimately helping people perform in moments that matter. I've kind of went on a bit of a journey my own self last 2 years, where I was trying to think, who am I now? Do you know? And what is my message? What do I do? And I think I was randomly sitting on the beach one of the days, and just that line came into my head in terms of helping people perform in moments that matter. I was like, that's what I do, and that's everything I do comes back to that. And I think to answer that question,
So that's what fulfills you, is when you see that happen.
yeah,
That's what gives you joy.
It gives me a sense of purpose. I genuinely believe it's why I've been put here. It's why I've been put on the world. I couldn't do anything else. I couldn't imagine myself doing anything else. I don't think I'm good at anything else. I don't think I'm amazing at that either, but I'm willing to continually learn and continually get better. And I think it's such important work in what you can do, and I feel very privileged and gifted to be able to do that, because I know there's some people who are sitting in the bank getting someone's mortgage who can't pay the next payment, and they're worrying about paying for the children. And
absolutely, it is a blessing to be able to to pay your bills and raise your kids, and also do something that gives you purpose. It really is, especially in this day and age. It's so hard to to find your calling, and then be able to succeed somewhat in that enough that you can survive. It's hard. You're blessed.
There's a pressure though, I think, there's a pressure with that, I think, as well, because often like even meeting clients, they would chat to you and say, I don't really love my job, it doesn't give me that same passion and purpose you get from what you do. And like, all right, but what does that job also allow you to have? And
Exactly. My sister-in-law is a teacher, great teacher. She's really good at it, and she really enjoys it. But she's got a couple of kids now, and she's kind of eased off. She could take better jobs, better pay, better status, and all that. And we were having a chat the other day, and she's like, I'm actually, my purpose now is the kids. The job gives me space and income and stuff to so you can find your purpose in other ways, and it doesn't strictly have to be about your work.
Completely. Do you know what I mean? I think we've built up, it's again the social media thing, it's the world we've built in, that you have to be always pushing yourself, you have to be always atop your game, you have to be always, but like, what does that actually mean? To me, that's the perfect example there. Like, well, I could do that, but then what happens?
What are you
no
losing?
time with my family.
Yeah.
I've no relationship with my kids.
Yeah, I'm sure you've come across many people, especially sports people, who have ploughed years after years, into training midweek, just nonstop, and at the end they look back and they've missed their kids' childhood, and that age-old thing of people, on their deathbed, and they're like, well, what? Nobody ever regrets spending too much time with their kids. Well, most people. So yeah, it's just having. But that's what it is having an eye on what is giving me fulfillment and purpose and stuff.
Yeah, and I think it's defining, define what is your definition of high performance, and what does that mean for you? Because mine's different to you, and yours is going to be different to Jerry's, and Jerry's going to be different to Linda's, and we're all different. And I think, again, that's why I loved that philosophy with the Greek gymnasium. Part 3 of your session was studying philosophy, and philosophy ultimately means, what does life mean for and to you? And if you think of, even from an educational point, how much time do we actually spend on that as human beings?
Not enough.
Nearly nothing, depending on the family you grew up in, and
very little in school. Obviously, like as you say, family and stuff. Sometimes people are maybe more spiritual in nature through church and stuff. They can spend and maybe understand the philosophy through theology. Excuse me, and stuff. But once you kind of get out on your own, a lot of people in the modern age have just kind of dropped that off.
Completely,
it's sad. Are there any you kind of talked a little bit about learning from mistakes? Is there any mistake that you made on your kind of career path, on your journey that and you don't strike me as a guy who has many regrets as such, but something you would, if you could go back, you would go a different direction, or maybe something you would have done earlier that took you a while to realize, anything like that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I definitely have no regrets.
Good.
Because there's no point having regret, because you can't change it.
Yeah.
And again, it leads into that philosophy I live by: every mess is a message. There's been lots of mistakes, lots of fuck ups, and there still is every day, but if there's one thing I could go back, I don't think it's necessarily a mistake or necessarily something I could change, obviously, but it's not necessarily a mistake. But I think for me, it's more so giving yourself permission to speak what you believe. I think that's if I could go back and
so if you could go back to, say, you're in secondary school and you were able to talk to yourself, that'd be the message you'd give yourself. Be
so
like,
much.
just like, yeah.
I think just speak what you actually believe and back yourself. I think that was always my biggest struggle from an early age. I never backed myself. I never believed myself. And you know, sometimes I meet people say, "Geez, you've an amazing business now." I said, "Yeah, but you don't see the hard."
Yeah, the hard yards.
Not even the hard
yards.
things I had to do, but the
struggle
parts of me I had to overcome and let go of all this identity and story that I've built for so long. So I think that's the biggest thing. I think for me is, but as I said, I'm going to contradict myself that if I hadn't had that, I wouldn't have the awareness that I have now, or the ability to be able to sit with people, understand them now either. So
that's why you can have no regrets. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. No, it's the butterfly effect. You can't go back and change anything.
Yeah.
You know, it's all a journey of learning and, you know, self-development and stuff. Last question for you then. Fast forward 15 years from now, 20 years from now, where's Dan Glynn? What's he doing?
Down having a cup of tea, watching the All-Ireland final.
Seeing Meath win the All-Ireland.
That's it, seeing Meath win the All-Ireland. And
again,
my job is quit forever. That's all I need to do. Go on the beer for the rest of my life.
So I asked you a little bit social media. What is your social media page? What are your handles?
My social media, my own personal one. Well, not really personal one. Is kind of where I deliver most of my kind of messages and work and stuff through that medium is Dan Glynn Coaching. And then
Dan Glynn Coaching. So at Dan Glynn Coaching.
Yeah, at Dan Glynn Coaching.
Yeah.
I always get asked anytime you ring insurance companies or Wi-Fi companies, that Glynn or Lynn? It's Glynn with a G, so that's Glynn.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's.
And does the gym have its own website?
Yeah, gym has its own website. It's www.danglynncoaching.ie, and then for all high performance athletes, sports psych, mental performance, all that cool stuff. That's Inside Out High Performance.
Okay, and that's a separate site. It's a separate business.
Yeah, but once you go onto my Instagram, you can kind of funnel through it all there.
What's going to cost me for membership to your gym? I want to go. How much
is it going to cost me? Cups of tea, that'll do the job rightly.
I could do cups of tea, all right. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure. That is the Business Hour with Dan Glynn, and thanks for joining us.
Carmela Margaret.